Thanks for joining me today. I wanted to share a video tutorial on how I colored the strawberries from a swap card I made this past weekend. Here's the finished card. I used Stampin' Up's Sharing Sweet Thoughts stamp set. It's on the last page of the 2017-2018 catalog. With every stamp set sold, Stampin' Up will donate $3 to the Ronald McDonald House Charities. So let's go ahead and get started. I did pre-stamp the image in basic gray archival ink onto a scrap piece of Whisper White cardstock. I used the masking technique to stack my strawberries on top of each other. Really quickly, let me explain it. I stamped the bottom layer of strawberries onto my cardstock. Then I also stamped the strawberries image on the top middle section of a post-it note. And then I fussy cut or cut out the strawberries from the post-it note. To use the mask, I put the mask over the bottom layer of strawberries and then I stamped again with the strawberry image on top. So then they'll stack nicely on top of each other. So we'll remove that and let's go ahead and get started and talk about watercoloring with the watercolor pencils and a blender pen. The pencils come in a pack of 13 colors. I'm only using 2 colors for today's project, the Real Red number 1 for the strawberries and the Old Olive number 5 for the stems of the strawberries. The blender pens come in a pack of 3 and they have a tip on either side. So I'm going to start with coloring in the Old Olive stems with my Old Olive watercolor pencil. So what I decided to do is pick about half the stems to color a little bit darker and half the stems to color a little bit lighter. So using your watercolor pencil, press firmly on each stem that you want to color in darker. Leave a little bit of white space because we're going to blend in that color with the blender pen. So let's just go ahead and color. There's 12 strawberries, so I'm going to just go ahead and pick 6 to color in a little bit darker. So there we go. And then we'll color the remaining 6 very lightly. So this is a very light touch. I am actually barely even touching. Almost like a scribble. And then I'm just going to bring over a piece of scrap paper. When you're using your blender pens, you always want to just double check to make sure you have no color on the pen from a previous project. And then I'm just going to pull the color gently and blend in the white space. You can even leave a little bit of white space. So I'm going to do all the darker stems. Then I'll scribble off the darker color and come back into the lighter color. So there we go, and scribble off. So now for the strawberries, I decided to draw a line down the middle of each one and only color half of each side. With my watercolor pencil, then I'm going to blend in the other side. So let me show you what I mean. I colored just the left side and I put on a good amount of color on each one. So I'm pressing pretty firmly onto my cardstock with my pencil. Go ahead and color each. I colored each one like this. If you wanted to change it and do some darker and some lighter, you could do that as well. I made 12 of these cards for a team swap for this past Sunday night, so it was a little bit of time coloring each one, but it's very therapeutic and it reminds me of being a child and coloring in my coloring books. I really like this technique because with very limited supplies you could color any lined art image from our catalogs. So just with a pack of watercolor pencils and a pack of blender pens, it's a very low investment to get a beautiful technique on your projects. Okay, so all the half of our strawberries are colored in. I'm just going to double check my blender pen, and then we're going to blend from left to right. And we'll just pull that color out, and you could even leave a little bit of white space. Okay, perfect. Now to just finish off my card, I ended up stamping the sentiment in Old Olive ink. The jar topper I stamped in Real Red ink. Both the jar and the jar topper are cut out with the Big Shot and our Everyday Jar framelits. The sentiment was punched out with the Classic Label Punch. The banner here is the Delightful Daisy Designer Series paper, and that was punched at the bottom with the banner Triple Punch. I added a double bow with the Whisper White Baker's Twine and added that on with the glue dot. And there's my finished card, and that's the technique of watercoloring with your watercolor pencils and a blender pen. Thanks so much for tuning in today.